this is going to be 2 video responses in one, which is kind of funny because Calvin A. Hobbs apparently was roaming around some of my old videos, and oddly enough, he picked the video in which I did a video response to him and like 4 other people all in one video. And it's kind of weird because when I was on my way home tonight, I was like, I'm going to do a video response to one video that I'd already wanted to do a response to, and another video which I'd already seen. Mr. Narrator, who did a script his link to the video will be in the description, because this won't be a response to him, and I'll explain why in a second. He did a video asking people to come on here and explain the different styles of pro wrestling, particularly like the Japanese styles, the difference between King's Road and Strong Style, and different things. Now, I'm not going to do that because the right guy is actually apparently going to do that, and that's Ichiban. So he's going to go out there and he's going to do that. He said it'll probably be a week or 2, but that's fine. He'll be able to do it far, far better than me. But he also wanted kind of more of a definition on the NWA style, the old NWA style, the WWE style, and the current indie style. And that's what I wanted to talk about, because EmeraldFlowsion, who this will be a video response to, only because he has less subscribers. That's why. But the link will be in the description as well. I recommend seeing both of those videos before you watch the rest of this. Just saying. Just throwing that out there. But in his video, he talked about the fact that was the current direction as far as the in-ring product, such as like Ring of Honor, was that the right direction to go? And he was bringing up Ring of Honor only because that was more the well-known, but really when you started kind of listening and reading what he was saying and some of the descriptions and stuff, he was really talking about Evolve, but I mean, he was talking about Ring of Honor as well, and PWG, and kind of where does Chikara play in all of this. I wanted to kind of discuss on that as well. But let me start with Mr. Narrator's point about the WWE style. Let me talk about that first. The WWE style, to me, is for the WWE. Now, hear me out. For the WWE is the perfect style for them. It does have one major flaw. Let me talk about why it's the perfect for them. It allows them to use their big giant production company, their big giant production trucks, their guys that know what they're doing, and allows them to help tell a story because of the way it is, because it is slow and prodding, because it is, heel versus face, because it is, the crowd, trying to call to the crowd, all of that sort of thing. It also is good for them because the amount of shows they do a year, it's more of a, not that any pro wrestling is low impact, but it's much more of a low impact style than the other styles. So it does keep the injuries down and all of that. However, there is one huge flaw with the WWE style, and it wasn't a flaw for a long time. It's a flaw now, and that is this: guys must be over for the WWE style to work, and it has to be pretty much, a good section of the roster, almost, I would say 90% of the roster has to be over in some way for that style to work. Today, I would say you're talking maybe 30% of the roster would probably be considered over. They don't do a good enough job of getting their guys over, and that hurts the WWE style, and that's why I think people get so frustrated with it. Now, I do think that wrestling has evolved to a point, because of MMA, that WWE needs to kind of do more of an NWA style. And the difference between the WWE style and the NWA style is the NWA style was much more of an athletic, fast-paced style than the WWE style ever, pretty much up until the Attitude Era, to an extent, though I would say that was more brawling and not as much wrestling, to an extent. I think you're probably talking early, kind of like right after the Attitude Era is really where you started seeing them institute more of a style that was more athletic based. And with Benoit, yes, I mentioned Benoit, Angle, the ECW guys that they had brought in that they were still using, the guys they had brought in from WCW that they were using, the guys that were left over from the Attitude Era, all of that, I think they were using that much more of that style. And I think that style is what the WWE needs to do. Doesn't mean they need blood, doesn't mean they need guts, doesn't mean they need hardcore, but I think they do need a much more, a higher impact, particularly on TV, maybe not on the house shows, but particularly on TV, a much higher impact style. And that's pretty much what the NWA was. NWA was very much the same way of face versus heel, very much, high impact wrestling, more of wrestling presented more as a sport. In the ring, it was much more, the stories told in the ring were usually more sports oriented, more than just good versus evil and that sort of thing. Though you still had that as well. But that is how I would describe the NWA. Jim and I would actually probably be the best guy to actually do a video on, explaining the differences. But that's how I would explain it, at least. And then you have the current indie style. And the current indie style, to me, is sort of a U.S. version of Japanese wrestling that people enjoyed, which I would say would be King's Road and the junior style, and kind of mixing all that together and coming up with the current indie style. Now, that style is very good. It's a lot of fun to watch, but it is such a high impact style that it is not a style that like the WWE could do on a regular basis. A good example of this was Shane Douglas and Taz talked about this once on an interview. I think it was Shane Douglas talked about this on an interview. I think it was the first guy, and then I heard Taz talk about it too. ECW back in the day went on a tour, and usually they did like two shows a week. Well, on this tour they did like 3 or 4 shows, and apparently by the end of the tour, guys, because they were always like, oh, we do this style, we're such tough, mofos, because we do all the stuff that the other guys don't. And Douglas and Taz and even Sabu to a degree, and some other guys were always like, yeah, whatever, we're not working the schedule that they're working. And they worked, like, it was either 3 or 4 days, and on the last day, that 3rd or 4th day, guys apparently were dying. Guys were like, oh my God, I've never hurt this bad in my life, sort of thing. So that's why, WWE could never do that style. Now, I do think the style is good for indie wrestling because it is different than the WWE style, and you do have to if anything that is not WWE has to be different as far as in-ring, because it has to be different. You can't outdo Vince. The only company that ever tried to outdo Vince and ever did outdo Vince for even a little while was WCW. And how much money did they have to spend to do it? No company has that much money. You're never going to be able to do that. You're going to have to come at it from a different aspect of it. You're going to have to do things that are different. And I think that is where that style comes into play, myself. Now, this goes more into EmeraldFlowsion's video, where he was talking about the evolution of pro wrestling and that style, and, is it a good style? I think it is for that reason. He also brought up the fact that we don't see enough selling with that version of wrestling. And I do agree that that's one thing I don't like about it. But usually you have guys that can put together enough matches and there's enough going on to where, I can, to a degree, kind of ignore the sellings. Same way when you have a Dragon Gate 6-man or Dragon Gate tag match. There's so much going on that you kind of, and it's not, it's not like a Jack Evans spot fest. There's other things going on to where the selling, you don't notice it. You don't notice the no selling until after the match, which to me kind of shows that there is something to the validity of that style. Now, as far as, he brought up matches where guys would work over arms and that would play into the match. I agree with that. I think that's I love matches like that. Today, I don't think you can do matches like that all the time. It used to be every match on a card would be that. Guy would work on an arm, guy would work on a leg, guy would, you would have something like that. I don't think you can do that now because I think fans have kind of been taught, and I don't think they don't have the patience to sit there and watch the same, basically, in their minds, the same match. Even though it might be telling a different story, it's, oh, well, this guy's working over the leg. I already saw a guy working over an arm, now I'm seeing a guy working over the leg for this match. And it's, somewhat the same thing. I think you can do that, like, once, or I think you do that twice on a card, and because I think you can vary it up enough to where fans won't, kind of get tuned out. But you can't, I I don't think you can do that in today's market and keep fans entertained throughout an entire card. I think you do have to kind of mix it up with some fun stuff and this and that and the other. Now, he also brought Chikara, and he brought Chikara's style, and that he liked Chikara's style, and I agree. I think Chikara's style is so different from everything else that you will see in pro wrestling. To the extent, I'm going to say something that will probably surprise a lot of people, but I do believe this. I've believed this for at least 2 or 3 years. If Chikara ever got someone to notice them and put them on TV and on the right sort of network, and the right sort of network would be more of, you know, a kids network or maybe something like G4 or something like that, to where a promotion like Chikara would work. Because, you know, if WWE is PG to a large extent, Chikara is G-rated. The wrestling is very good. It's very different. It's lucha based. It's a lot kind of like, it's kind of almost an American, it's kind of Dragon Gate with more lucha in it, I guess, is an American version of Dragon Gate with more of a lucha influence, maybe, I guess is how I put it. But I do believe that of every company out there, Chikara probably has the highest upside of anybody, because they have unique characters, they have characters that are easy to care for, they have good storylines. They do have very good storylines, I think almost to their detriment, because since they're a DVD-based company, and some people would say, well, you want storylines so that people will pick up every DVD, but no one's going to pick up every DVD. You can't. You have to sit there and go, okay, how many DVDs are people actually going to buy a year? Are they going to buy 6? Are they going to, you know, if we put out 12 DVDs, how many are they actually going to buy? And I think that you have to keep that in mind. And I think if you have really intricate storylines that involve you buying multiple DVDs, then becomes a problem. And I think that's the one problem with Chikara. Yet, if they were on TV, I don't think it would be a problem. I think it would be to their benefit. So, I do think that their style, because it's so unique, and I think that's the one thing that people have to realize, is that you have to do things that are unique. You have to do things that are, if you're on your own, to differentiate yourself from WWE, so that you are not, so that people don't go, oh, it's just like WWE, and you look at it as second rate, so people will get more excited. And I think Chikara has that. I think ROH has that. But if you put Chikara and ROH on, if they both got TV deals at the same time, it would not surprise me at all if Chikara just ran away with it. Because I think the type of wrestling that they have for a TV product is actually a better suited for television. I think you could still do it with Ring of Honor. If Ring of Honor went to, you know, something other than HDNet, you definitely would still have, you'd have to change up the product a little bit, and I don't think it would hurt the product, but it definitely wouldn't be the exact same product. It would probably be, you know, you'd have more promos, you'd have more of the stuff that people complain isn't in Ring of Honor, and almost, and then in Chikara, I think Chikara could put on the exact same show they put on now and put it on television. The problem with that would be, would it hook on, because it is so different, and it is kind of almost radically different than anything else that most people would see in the U.S. But there's my thoughts. I've rambled. It was more of me rambling, but I definitely, there's one other thing I want to talk about, because EmeraldFlowsion brought up MMA and trying to, you know, pro wrestling doing what MMA can't do, and this is something I've talked about a lot. He was talking more of it from telling a story in a ring standpoint, and I agree with that, but I also think that wrestlers also have to do the things that people want to see in MMA that you don't always see in MMA. Hard strikes. That's where I think the ROH style works. Hard strikes, guys getting thrown on their head, a lot of aerial type of thing. Not so much spot fests, but more of a high impact, more of something you wouldn't necessarily see in MMA, but things you would like to see in MMA, sort of thing. So with that, I'm out. I rambled long enough, but check out both of their videos. They were both very good. So with that, I'm out. Have a good one. Later.